Dinner was already tense before I said a single word. I'd spent all day rehearsing how to tell them. Printed the email, folded it, refolded it, read it so many times I could quote every line. "We are thrilled to welcome you into the accelerated clinical program." It was real. After years of late-night studying, community college transfers, and working part-time just to afford scrubs and anatomy books, I was in. I didn't want applause. I just wanted acknowledgement. Maybe even pride. So when the plates were down and Elise started bragging about her nursing exam scores again, I found the courage. I got into med school. Everything stopped. My mom blinked. Into where? The accelerated clinical program. St. Audley. Full tuition covered. Elise set her fork down. Dad leaned back in his chair. St. Audley? That's not real med school. That's some shortcut program. It's accredited. It's advanced placement. It's competitive. He waved his hand like I was a fly. Telling people you're going to be a doctor is a joke. Mom chimed in. We don't need another Elise, Naomi. You barely made it through high school without falling apart. I stared at her. Elise laughed under her breath. Maybe they just needed diversity points. That one stung. Worse than anything. I earned it. Dad scoffed. You earned stress. You earned chaos. You earned this family's embarrassment. What you didn't earn is a white coat. A girl like you. Don't say it, I whispered. A girl like you doesn't become a doctor, he said anyway. My mother stood. This isn't a movie, Naomi. You're not special. You're not a miracle. You're a burden we've carried too long. You want to chase dreams? Fine. She looked at my father. He didn't even hesitate. Get out. And don't come back. Just like that. The girl who paid her way. Who stayed up helping Elise study. Who swallowed being called the disappointment year after year. Tossed like trash. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just folded the email quietly and slipped it back into my pocket. Okay, I said. That was all. I packed one backpack. Left everything else behind. Books, clothes, childhood photos. I didn't want reminders of a house I had never truly been allowed to call home. My parents didn't watch me walk out. Elise didn't even ask where I'd go. They thought they'd broken me, but they didn't know. You can't break someone who learned to heal herself in silence. My name is Naomi, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because when they said I'd never wear a white coat, they forgot. I already knew how to walk through pain, with steady hands. I didn't become the family disappointment overnight. That title was carved slowly, like water against stone. It started when I was 8, and Elise won her first spelling bee. My parents called the whole family. Had a cake made. Took photos like she'd cured cancer. When I won a writing contest a month later, they said, "That's cute. But don't get distracted. That's how it always was." She sparkled. I was supposed to applaud. Elise had the smile, the hair, the grace. I had the questions, the weird interests, the quiet. She got a birthday party every year. I got money's tight. She took dance, gymnastics, horseback riding. I took care of her when she got tired of all three. By high school, it was obvious. I was the difficult one, the emotional one, why can't you be more like your sister? They never said it outright, but I could hear it in every silence. When Elise got accepted into nursing school, they nearly threw a parade. She's going to make this family proud, Dad beamed. When I got into a pre-med track at community college, Mom looked at me and said, "That's a nice backup. You'll figure something out." I studied every night while Elise skipped classes and flirted her way into retakes. I tutored classmates, aced exams, pulled doubles at the cafe just to afford used anatomy books. She posted pictures in scrubs and got thousands of likes. I made flashcards on the bus and got ignored. I never told anyone how hard it was. How often I stayed up just to cry quietly into a pillow. How many times I watched Elise fail upward while I scraped and clawed just to keep up. And when I got the email from St. Audley, I sat on my bed and held it like a love letter. Because for once someone saw me, not as the shadow of the real daughter. Not as the failure, but as someone capable. chosen. And then I told my parents, and they made me feel like I had forged the whole thing. Because in their eyes, nothing I did could ever hold weight next to Elise. That's what favoritism does. It doesn't just make you invisible. It makes you believe you're unworthy of being seen. But I kept going. After I left that house, I moved into a shared room with 2 other med students, both working-class girls like me. We bonded over energy drinks, trauma, and textbooks soaked in tears. I took weekend shifts as a med aide, shadowed emergency rotations, studied for 10 hours straight until my hands cramped and my eyes blurred. Because I didn't need them to believe in me anymore. I just needed to believe in myself. Every time I hit a wall, I remembered my father's voice. "You're not doctor material." And I whispered back in my head, "Watch me." They say the worst part of leaving is packing. But for me, it was realizing how little I actually had to take. My life in that house was never built to last. I didn't have a real room, just a corner. I didn't have keepsakes, just what I could afford and protect. So I packed quickly, quietly. A few hoodies, my worn-out anatomy flashcards, a second-hand laptop, this St. Audley acceptance email, printed, folded, taped to the inside of my journal like a holy scripture. No one stopped me. I moved past Elise's door, heard her giggling on the phone, still basking in their pride. I passed the kitchen, where my dad sat scrolling through TV channels like he hadn't just told his daughter she'd never be good enough to save a life. I stepped out the door and didn't look back. No one asked where I was going, because no one cared. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I'd come crawling back. They thought I couldn't survive without their condescending help. But what they didn't realize, I'd been surviving without them for years. That night, I took a bus across town to a tiny apartment shared by 2 med students I met in an online study group. We'd only met once in person, but when I told them what happened, one of them, Ava, said, "Girl, come crash here. You're one of us now. Let's pass this damn test and make them choke on your white coat." We didn't have a couch. I slept on an air mattress for the first 2 months. But I had Wi-Fi. I had quiet. And I had freedom. For the first time, I could study without someone yelling in the next room. I could cry without guilt. I could breathe without feeling like I owed someone oxygen in return. I worked nights at a clinic, mopping floors and refilling 4 drawers. Spent days in classrooms so cold, I wore gloves while taking notes. There were nights I wanted to quit. Nights I whispered, they were right. I'm not cut out for this. But every time, I pictured Elise in her designer scrubs, my mom clapping at her white coat ceremony, my dad saying, "Finally, a daughter we can be proud of." And I'd pick up my pen.
Keep going.
1 semester down. Then another. I passed my first mock clinical with a 98%. Got invited to assist on my first trauma simulation. Started earning the respect of professors who didn't care about my last name, only how steady I held a scalpel. I didn't update my family. Didn't post anything. They didn't ask, and I didn't offer. They'd already told me who I was. Now I was becoming someone they'd never recognize until it was too late. Because in just 3 months, the sister they adored would roll into an emergency room in pieces. And I'd be the only one who could save her. It was a Tuesday night. Shift change. The kind of hour where exhaustion mixes with caffeine and you stop counting how long your badge has been on your chest. I was in the ER wing at St. Audley, part of our trauma rotation. I had just stepped into the break room, unzipped my jacket halfway, and reached for my second cup of vending machine coffee when the call came over the intercom. Incoming code trauma. Young adult female, mid-20s, unresponsive. Motorcycle collision. Possible internal bleeding. ETA 2 minutes. We moved like we were trained to. Controlled chaos. Gloves. Gurney cleared. Intubation tray prepped. I didn't think much of it at first. Trauma was trauma. Then I saw the ambulance doors fly open. And everything in me went still. It was her. Elise. Her hair was matted with blood. Left side torn up. The medic shouted over the noise. Motorbike wreck. Hit a median. No helmet. BP dropping fast. We need to open lines now. They wheeled her into trauma bay too, and I stood frozen at the corner of the room. My fingers curled tightly around the edge of the tray. My heart wasn't racing, it was slowing, like everything inside me was going quiet to let my training take over. Then I heard the attending say it. "Dr. Naomi, you're running point." I blinked.
He looked at me. "Now."
"You're the most familiar with polytrauma protocol. Let's move." I didn't flinch, because this was the moment. Not revenge, not rage, just readiness. I slipped on the gloves, walked toward my sister. Her face was pale. There was so much blood. I checked her vitals, gave instructions, called for fluids, ordered scans, took charge. Not a stutter, not a tremble, because I wasn't the broken girl from the dinner table anymore. I was the doctor, and she was now the one holding on by a thread. As I inserted the four, her eyes fluttered open. Barely, just long enough for them to lock onto mine.
Panic.
Recognition.
Shame.
But I said nothing, because this wasn't about us. This was about saving a life. Even if it belonged to the same girl who once whispered, "You'll never make it." A few minutes later, I heard a commotion near the entrance. Two voices. Familiar. Frantic. My parents.
"Where is she?"
"That's our daughter. Elise Mercer." "Please, where is she?" The nurse on call tried to calm them. "She's in trauma bay too. She's with the doctor now." And then, "Wait, who's the doctor?" my mom asked. "Naomi Mercer." Silence. I didn't hear the rest, but I could imagine it. Their faces, their confusion, the realization. They had begged for someone to save Elise, and got me, the daughter they tossed out, the dreamer they mocked, the girl who could never be a doctor. Now in scrubs, gloves, Elise's life in my hands. And when the procedure was done, when her bleeding was stabilized and her vitals evened out, I pulled off my gloves, stepped out of the trauma bay, and there they were, my mother, my father, staring at me like they'd seen a ghost in white. I looked at them, calm, collected, lifted my chin, and said, "Looks like I came back after all." They didn't move. When I said the words, "Looks like I came back after all," it was like the hospital hallway froze. My father blinked first, not out of recognition, out of disbelief. Like he couldn't reconcile the woman in front of him, in scrubs, confident, standing tall, with the girl he told to get out and never return. My mother's hand was on her chest. Her mouth hung slightly open. She looked at me like she'd seen someone reborn. And I guess, in a way, I had been. She took a breath. "Naomi, you're?" "Yes," I said. "I'm the doctor in charge of Elise's case." She winced when I said doctor. Dad stepped forward, arms stiff at his sides. "We didn't know." I looked him dead in the eyes. "You didn't ask." They both fell silent. Behind them, the ER buzzed with activity. Beeping monitors. Intercom pages. Shoes squeaking against tile. But between us? Nothing but consequences. Mom tried again, voice trembling. "How is she?"
"Alive."
"Stable." She was lucky. Another 10 minutes, and she might have coded. Dad swallowed hard. "You saved her?" I tilted my head. "Would that surprise you?" He didn't answer. So I kept going. I managed her airway, inserted the lines, stabilized her BP, led the trauma team. "The girl you said would never be Dr. Material? She's the reason your favorite daughter is breathing right now." Mom's lip quivered. "Naomi, we were under stress. We said things." I raised a hand. "Don't. Not here.
"Not now."
I looked between them. This is a hospital, not a place for guilt trips or excuses. You came here asking someone to save her. That's what I did. Anything else? Doesn't matter right now. For a moment, they looked like children. Cornered, small, ashamed, and I felt nothing. No rage, no victory, just completion. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to gloat. They were standing in front of their own judgment, delivered by the very hands they discarded. "When can we see her?" Mom asked quietly. "She's sedated. You'll be allowed in once the nurses clear her vitals." I started to turn away. Dad spoke again. Naomi, you've changed. I looked back, voice steady.
No.
You just never looked close enough. Then I walked away, into the ward, into the quiet where competence lived. My hands were still shaking slightly beneath my gloves, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the weight of being trusted in a space I fought so hard to stand in. That night, I stayed late, checked on Elise's chart, updated the nurses, reviewed her imaging. Not once did I let personal history cloud medical protocol, because I wasn't there to get revenge. I was there to do what I trained for, even if the patient on the table was the reason I cried myself to sleep for half my life. At 2:08 a.m., I looked in on her one last time. She was asleep, breathing steady, the machines finally quiet. And in that silence, I realized something. I had walked away once feeling like nothing. Now I walked back in as everything they needed. The next morning, I was on my second round when I passed by the family waiting area. And there they were. Mom curled up in a hospital chair, wringing a tissue in her hands. Dad pacing like he had somewhere important to be, even though for once, there was nothing they could do. They saw me before I saw them. My mom jumped up like someone had fired a gun. Naomi, what's happening now? She's stable, still sedated. Her vitals are improving. You'll be able to visit after her neurology check. She nodded too fast, like agreeing with me now could rewrite the last 18 years. Dad stepped forward. Thank you. It sounded like gravel. I nodded, but didn't smile. This isn't personal. It's protocol.
He winced. Good.
Can we talk? Privately, he asked.
I paused.
Then led them to the end of the hallway, the quiet corner near the window where the vending machines hummed softly in the background. They looked nervous, like kids waiting to get scolded. Naomi, Mom started, we were wrong.
About so much.
We didn't know what you were capable of. You were always so distant. I raised an eyebrow. You threw me out. We didn't mean it like that.
No. You meant it exactly like that.
Get out and never come back. That's what you said. And I did exactly what you asked. Dad looked at the floor. Mom looked at me like I had just slapped her. But I wasn't being cruel. I was being clinical. Do you know what it's like to carry a dream with no one cheering for you? To scrub blood out of your shoes at 3 a.m. because you stayed late practicing intubations while your sister slept through her exams and still got praise. They didn't respond. I didn't become a doctor to prove you wrong. I became a doctor because I knew I could save lives, even if mine was never worth saving to you. Mom choked back a sob. Dad whispered, we just didn't know you were strong enough. I looked at him, steady and cold. That was your mistake, not mine. Then I stepped forward, close enough for them to see everything in my face, the years of being ignored, diminished, discarded. You don't get to apologize now because you need something. You don't get access to this version of me because you finally realized I wasn't the problem. We don't want anything, Mom said. You already got something, I corrected. Your daughter is alive. That's enough. They both nodded, slowly, broken. Because there was nothing left to argue with. I wasn't fighting. I wasn't begging. I wasn't hoping for love that was never coming. I was just done. As I turned to walk away, my dad said something I'll never forget. You scare me now. I stopped. Didn't look back. No, I said. You're not scared of me. You're scared of what it means that you were wrong about me, and that I didn't need your love to become whole. Then I left them standing there.
Still, silent,
and completely powerless. When I walked into her room, Elise was awake.
Barely.
Wires everywhere. Face pale. Lips dry, but conscious. She blinked slowly as I stepped closer to the bed, her eyes tracking the movement in my coat, the white one.
Mine.
Hey, I said softly, checking her vitals on the screen. Her lips parted. Naomi? I didn't smile, didn't hold her hand. I just confirmed her name, her age, the day of the week, the usual neuro check. Her voice cracked. You're a doctor? I am. Silence. The weight of it pressed into the corners of the room. She blinked again, slower this time.
Processing.
I thought you left. I finished. I did. You all told me to. Her eyes glossed. Not with guilt, with confusion. As if her memory was trying to stitch together the broken pieces between mocking me at the dinner table and now, me standing over her in command of her care. You saved me? Yes. I didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't soften the truth. Didn't call it help. You were bleeding out. No pulse. I made the call. I did the procedure. You're alive because I did what I was trained to do. Her breath hitched. I looked her over clinically. Try not to talk too much.
You'll be sore for a while.
Multiple fractures, 2 broken ribs, a torn spleen. You'll recover if you follow instructions. Her eyes welled up. Maybe it was pain. Maybe it was something else. She tried to reach for the water cup with trembling fingers. I picked it up, held the straw to her lips, and let her sip. It wasn't kindness. It was duty. The way I would for any patient. You are always better, she whispered. I paused.
That?
I hadn't expected. I met her gaze. Then why did you treat me like I was nothing? She blinked fast, tears falling sideways into her hairline. Because if you weren't nothing, it meant I was. That landed.
Deep.
The truth in it made my jaw tighten. Because I knew exactly what she meant. In our family, there wasn't room for more than one star. She had been raised to shine.
I had been trained to dim.
And the moment I stepped out of the shadows, her world cracked. I stepped back, finished updating her chart.
Rest.
The nurses will monitor you closely. As I turned to leave, she whispered, Thank you. I paused, but didn't turn around. I didn't do it for you. She didn't reply.
Didn't need to.
Some debts are too old to collect. Some forgiveness isn't ours to hand out, especially when it was never truly asked for. When I walked out of her room, I passed my parents in the hallway. They stood, waiting, hopeful. I looked at them flatly.
She'll live.
Relief flooded their faces. Mom whispered, God bless you. I said nothing. I just kept walking. Because the blessing wasn't mine to give. It was theirs to recognize. And for the first time, they finally had. The graduation was small. No fanfare. No confetti. Just a quiet ceremony in the main lecture hall of St. Audley, with white coats hanging like armor on silver hooks behind the podium. I almost didn't go. I'd already earned the title. Already worn the gloves. Already stitched skin and saved breath. But something in me needed to stand there, for the girl who left home with nothing but a folded acceptance letter and a cracked voice that no one listened to. So I walked onto the stage. I stood tall. Steady. No makeup. No applause. Just pride. The dean called my name. Dr. Naomi Mercer. There was a pause in the crowd. Then a roar of claps. My classmates, the ones who stayed up with me, cried with me, fought through blood and burnout with me. They stood. They clapped harder. Not out of surprise. Out of respect. I slipped on the white coat, not as a symbol of proving them wrong, but of finally believing I belonged. Later that evening, I stepped outside into the cool air and took a deep breath. And that's when I saw them. My parents. Standing awkwardly at the edge of the crowd. Not clapping. Not crying. Just watching me like they didn't know if they were allowed to speak. I hadn't told them about the graduation. But Elise must have. She was still recovering, in a rehab center closer to their house. We hadn't spoken since I left her hospital room. But she must have told them what day it was. What it meant. My father stepped forward first. Naomi. I looked at him. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he said, We don't know how to say sorry. I nodded once. Then don't. My mother flinched. Can't we try again? I took a slow breath and looked them both in the eyes. You told me a girl like me could never be a doctor. And now that I am, you want a place in this life. But the truth is, I didn't become this because of you. I became this in spite of you. They looked down. And that's when I said it. This coat? This badge? These hands? They're mine. Bought with sleepless nights, student loans, and quiet rage. You don't get to wear any part of it. We were wrong, Mom whispered.
Yes.
You were. I turned to leave. And then I stopped, looked back over my shoulder. By the way, I opened my arms slightly, not wide. Just enough. This is what a doctor looks like. Their eyes widened. Not from shock. From truth. Because for once they couldn't deny it. I didn't wait for a response. I walked away, white coat catching the wind, as camera flashes snapped in the distance and laughter rose from the graduates behind me. I wasn't the girl they threw out anymore. I was the woman who came back, not to ask for a seat at their table, but to build her own operating room. They told me I could never wear this coat. So, I made sure the day they needed it most, I'd be the one wearing it. Asterisk. Arrest him, my sister said, pointing at my son like he was a criminal.
Her voice was calm, too calm.
The officer hesitated. Ma'am, he's just a child. He stole my diamond bracelet, she snapped. It's worth $20,000. Check his backpack. I stood